sleeping Godzilla underneath Yellowstone that if it erupts in a maximum eruption called Category 8, it could literally tear the guts out of the United States of America.
Yellowstone National Park could be sitting on a time bomb. There is a supervolcano underneath the national treasure.
Yellowstone National Park is trembling. Over the past few weeks, officials have reported hundreds of earthquakes shaking the area.
Nearly 200 earthquakes were recorded in Yellowstone National Park in the past 2 weeks.
It's unsettling, especially considering the park sits atop a massive supervolcano. These tremors could be warning signs, and we may just be on the brink of something far worse.
Run!
With scientists closely monitoring the situation, the tension is rising. Is Yellowstone about to erupt? What does this mean for the millions who visit every year? Join us as we look into the reports of hundreds of earthquakes that have hit Yellowstone.
It's one of America's most loved national parks, but underneath the beauty lies a killer.
Yellowstone eruptions and threats. Hundreds of earthquakes shaking Yellowstone. What does it mean for the supervolcano beneath? Could this indeed be a warning sign of something bigger? Before we go into this, we will look at the history of eruptions at Yellowstone. Yellowstone's volcanic activity is actually pretty recent when you think about it in terms of how long the Earth has been around. It started about 2 million years ago with 3 massive eruptions that were way bigger than anything we've ever seen. The first big one happened around 2.1 million years ago and created a caldera. Basically, it released so much magma that the ground collapsed, leaving a giant hole in the Earth. This caldera is bigger than Rhode Island, measuring about 80 kilometers long, 65 kilometers wide, and really deep. It goes beyond Yellowstone and into the surrounding areas. The oldest caldera we know of is found near McDermott, Nevada, and Oregon. These calderas are above the Yellowstone hotspot, which is a kind of underground blowtorch where magma rises up from deep within the Earth. While the North American plate moves, the hotspot stays in the same spot, creating a trail of volcanic activity. Since history goes way back, are there recent earthquakes in Yellowstone today? Well, stick around because what's happening might surprise you. This hotspot has been responsible for eruptions and lava flows for the past 16.5 million years, shaping the eastern Snake River Plain, which used to be a mountainous region. There are also volcanic formations in Canada's Yukon area that were likely created by this same hotspot, dating back about 70 million years. The volcanic activity has continued, stretching from the Nevada-Oregon border through the Snake River Plain and up to Yellowstone. One example is the Bruno-Jarbidge volcanic field in Idaho, which erupted between 10 and 12 million years ago, sending ash all the way to Nebraska, killing animals like rhinoceroses and camels. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates that Yellowstone experiences about 1 or 2 major eruptions every million years, with smaller lava eruptions happening about 100 times every million years, along with several steam eruptions each century. Even though Yellowstone's volcano could erupt on a massive scale, studies show that the odds of a super eruption anytime soon are very low. The magma chamber beneath Yellowstone itself has only erupted a few times in history, mostly in smaller lava flows, with the last one about 70,000 years ago at Pitchstone Plateau. The reason Yellowstone gets so much attention is because of the chance, however small, of a super eruption. A super eruption is a huge event, releasing at least 1,000 cubic kilometers of material, which is enough to bury a place like Texas under 5 feet of ash. These eruptions are thousands of times stronger than the biggest eruptions we know. If Yellowstone's supervolcano were to erupt, it could have serious consequences that affect the entire world. The biggest concern is the massive amount of ash it could release. This ash could cover an area up to 500 miles wide and be several inches thick in some places. The ash would block and contaminate water sources, making them unusable and disrupting local agriculture by destroying crops. This would make it hard for farmers to grow food and supply the region with fresh produce. On top of the ash, the eruption would release a lot of volcanic gases, like sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere. These gases could cause huge changes in the environment and the climate. If the eruption were powerful enough, the gases could reach the stratosphere and, once there, cause a volcanic winter. This is when the gases block sunlight, cooling the Earth's temperature. A smaller eruption, like the one at Mount Pinatubo in 1991, caused global temperatures to drop by about 1 degree Celsius for years. The nearby states of Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming would also face serious dangers from things like pyroclastic flows, which are fast-moving waves of hot gas and volcanic debris. These flows are destructive and would wipe out anything in their path. This shows just how much a volcanic eruption can affect the global climate. For example, the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815 caused enough cooling to damage crops all over the world, possibly even causing famines in some places. While Yellowstone hasn't shown signs of a major eruption recently, scientists are still very interested in studying it due to its potential. Research continues to be conducted in the Yellowstone area to closely monitor the volcano's activity. Michael Pollan, a leading expert, explains that his team is keeping a close watch on Yellowstone to detect any early warning signs of an eruption. He reassures that an eruption isn't expected soon because there isn't enough magma beneath the surface or enough pressure to force the magma upward. According to Pollan, the volcano is relatively stable at the moment. His team tracks underground activity closely, monitoring things like seismicity, which is the frequency of earthquakes, in ground deformation. Pollan explains that if there were thousands of earthquakes within a short period, say a few weeks, combined with significant ground movement, tens of centimeters during the same time, it would be a clear warning sign. They also keep an eye on changes in geyser activity and the emission of heating gases, which can indicate volcanic changes. Pollan's team checks the temperatures of thermal features, monitors overall heat emissions from space, collects and analyzes the chemistry of gases and water, and even tracks stream and river flow along with their chemistry. Recent studies have shown that Yellowstone's magma chamber holds more liquid magma than scientists once thought. Pollan says this isn't a cause for alarm. In fact, it simply confirms what scientists already believed about Yellowstone. Previously, it was thought that the magma chamber beneath Yellowstone was 5 to 15% molten, but new research suggests it's closer to 16 to 20% molten. Both studies use the same data, but the updated figure comes from more advanced analysis methods. Pollan finds these findings reassuring and emphasizes that the majority of Yellowstone's magma chamber remains solid, which means the likelihood of a major eruption anytime soon is very low. Despite being a supervolcano, Yellowstone remains a stunning national park to visit, and the best part of the video is coming up next, so stay tuned. Yellowstone officials report hundreds of earthquakes. Earthquakes are natural disasters that no one wakes up expecting, but when they happen often enough, they can start to feel like a normal part of life. In Yellowstone, earthquakes are as common as drinking water is to humans. If you've ever visited, you might think you haven't experienced one, but chances are a small quake happened while you were there. Every year, around 1,000 to 3,000 earthquakes occur in Yellowstone. Most are too weak to be noticed, but some, like the big one in 1959, stand out. So why does Yellowstone have so many earthquakes? When was the most recent one? Keep watching because the most interesting part is still ahead. Just this January, the U.S. Geological Survey recorded a 3.7 magnitude earthquake near Mammoth, Wyoming, around 6 p.m. MST, close to the Norris Geyser Basin. Some people in the area felt the shaking, but seismologists said it was nothing unusual for Yellowstone and not a sign of any major activity. The National Park Service pointed out that Norris Geyser Basin is home to some of the park's most extreme geothermal features. The hottest temperature ever recorded in Yellowstone, 459 degrees, was measured in a drill hole just over 1,000 feet below the surface, showing how much heat and activity exist underground. Most of the thermal features at Norris are near or above the boiling point of 199 degrees at that elevation. According to the NPS, Norris has had thermal activity for at least 115,000 years, and the features in the basin change daily due to seismic activity and shifts in water flow. The area was named after Philetus W. Norris, Yellowstone's second superintendent, who was the first to document its geothermal features. Crackling Lake in Norris Geyser Basin is a good example of how active this region is. Yellowstone in its entirety gets between 1,500 and 2,500 small earthquakes per year, but larger, more destructive ones have also hit the area. Yellowstone sits within the Intermountain Seismic Belt, a zone stretching from Montana through Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, Nevada, and Arizona. The park is also home to an active volcano, and its famous geysers and hot springs are directly linked to the volcanic activity below. The combination of shifting tectonic plates and underground heat causes earthquakes when rocks along fault lines break under pressure. The energy released travels as seismic waves, shaking the surrounding areas at high speed. Earthquakes are not always destructive. In Yellowstone, they help keep geysers and hot springs active. Without them, places like Old Faithful could stop erupting. The tremors prevent mineral buildup from blocking underground channels, allowing hot water to keep flowing. The strongest earthquake in Yellowstone since the early 1980s happened on March 30th, 2014. It had a magnitude of 4.8 and was centered 4 miles outside Norris Geyser Basin. People in parts of Montana and Wyoming felt the shaking. Many visitors may not realize that Yellowstone has a system in place to track earthquakes. The University of Utah seismograph stations monitors the park's seismic activity around the clock. This research is part of the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, which includes the National Park Service, the U.S. Geological Survey, and the University of Utah. A scientist from the USGS regularly provides updates on the park's volcanic activity, including reports on earthquakes. Seismologists from the University of Utah, who operate 26 seismograph stations in Yellowstone, have observed that earthquake swarms are common. These swarms are clusters of small quakes that happen in the same area, sometimes over 100 in a single day. The largest recorded swarm was in 1985, with more than 3,000 quakes over 3 months along the West Entrance Road. Another swarm occurred in the winter of 2010, with nearly 2,000 quakes recorded between Old Faithful and West Yellowstone. Scientists use this monitoring system to map and better understand Yellowstone's underground geology. Powerful earthquakes can be terrifying. People who experienced the 1959 quake recalled being woken up by a loud roar, followed by the sound of trees breaking and falling. After a sudden silence, panicked screams filled the air. Earthquakes below magnitude 3.0 are usually too weak to notice, but those above 4.0 can cause damage. A magnitude 6.5 quake is strong enough to crack the ground. While earthquakes above 6.0 are not common in Yellowstone, they have happened before. The most well-known and devastating earthquake in the Yellowstone area struck 57 years ago. This 7.3 magnitude quake caused 18 miles of surface faulting and was felt across 600,000 square miles. It hit during peak tourist season, turning a peaceful campground into a disaster zone. On the night of August 17, 1959, around 250 visitors were scattered throughout Madison River near Hebgen Lake, just west of Yellowstone. Some stayed in private cabins and resorts, while others camped at Forest Service sites or makeshift spots along the roads. Just before midnight, a powerful jolt shook the ground, waking everyone. Moments later, a massive wall of water surged over Hebgen Dam and rushed downstream. Then came the most terrifying part. A huge section of the canyon wall broke loose and crashed down near Rock Creek Campground. In the darkness, families rushed to find safety. Some managed to reach higher ground, watching helplessly as the rising water consumed their campsites and vehicles. Others, trapped by the flood, desperately called for help. The night was filled with panic and uncertainty, and it took days to uncover the full scale of the tragedy. In the end, 28 people lost their lives, with 19 still buried beneath the landslide debris. Today, the area is known as Quake Lake. Visitors to Yellowstone can take a short trip to see it. The Earthquake Lake Visitor Center, open from late May to late September, overlooks the lake and offers exhibits, a working seismograph, a walking trail leading to a memorial boulder, and scheduled talks and films. A store run in partnership with Yellowstone Forever is also located there. Though this disaster happened 57 years ago, the history of this region stretches back much further. Millions of years, in fact. Interested? Let's get into it. Tourism value of Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone National Park is not only the oldest, but also one of the largest national parks in the United States, covering a massive 2.2 million acres. Established in 1872, it's a stunning display of natural beauty and geological wonders in the American West. Spanning across Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, the park offers a vast variety of landscapes and ecosystems, each more awe-inspiring than the last. From its incredible geothermal features to its peaceful lakes and beautiful valleys, Yellowstone is filled with natural treasures. One of the park's most famous landmarks is Old Faithful, the well-known geyser that erupts roughly every 90 minutes. Watching boiling water shoot up into the air has been mesmerizing visitors for over 100 years. The upper geyser basin, where Old Faithful is located, is full of geothermal activity, And the Grand Prismatic Spring, with its bright colors, stands out dramatically against the misty surroundings. But the park's geothermal wonders don't stop at geysers and hot springs. Yellowstone is also home to mud pots and fumaroles, which provide a quieter but equally fascinating glimpse into the Earth's geothermal processes. The Norris Geyser Basin, one of the hottest and most active thermal areas, is especially noteworthy for the variety of geothermal activity it hosts. Another highlight of the park is the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone, a massive canyon carved by the Yellowstone River. The canyon's steep yellow rock cliffs are what gave the park its name. The lower falls, which drop 308 feet into the canyon, create a breathtaking sight. A rainbow often appears in the mist around the falls, adding even more magic to the view. Whether you're on the north rim or the south rim, each offers unique views of the canyon's rugged beauty. For those who love the calm of nature, Yellowstone Lake is a must-see. As the largest high-elevation lake in North America, it has peaceful waters framed by towering mountains and forests. The lake's surface reflects the surrounding peaks, creating a stunning mirror effect that's especially beautiful at sunrise and sunset. The shoreline of Yellowstone Lake is lined with sandy beaches and forested coves, making it a great spot for fishing, boating, or just relaxing by the water. Another must-see area is Lamar Valley, often called the Serengeti of the American West. This wide-open valley is famous for its wildlife. You can spot bison, elk, and pronghorn antelope roaming freely across the meadows, and with some luck, wolves and grizzly bears are often seen too. The valley's vast views and wildlife make it a place that feels wild and untamed, offering a true sense of nature's power and beauty. In contrast to Lamar Valley's open landscapes, Yellowstone's lush forests and alpine areas offer a completely different kind of beauty. The Tower Roosevelt area, for instance, is full of thick forests, dramatic rock formations, and the beautiful Tower Fall. This waterfall drops down a steep cliff, framed by the towering rocks that give the area its name. The nearby forest trails are perfect for hiking and wildlife watching, offering a peaceful way to experience the park. Yellowstone is also home to many meadows, which burst into color during the spring and summer. Wildflowers like Indian paintbrush, lupine, and columbine fill the meadows, creating a vibrant scene against the backdrop of the mountains and forests. The park's varied elevation and geography make it a place of incredible biodiversity, from the high mountain peaks of the Absaroka Range to the river valleys below. The Beartooth Plateau, with its alpine lakes, offers a dramatic contrast to the park's geothermal features and green valleys. Another breathtaking spot is the Grand Prismatic Spring in the Midway Geyser Basin. This massive hot spring dazzles with rainbow colors of blue, green, red, orange, and yellow. It's one of the park's largest and most stunning attractions, drawing photographers from all over the world. Hayden Valley, known for its wildlife, is another great spot to visit. You'll likely see large herds of bison here, and with a little luck, you might even spot pronghorns, elk, or bears. It's easy to access by car, with plenty of pull-offs for photos, and there are several hiking trails, though visitors should be careful as bears are sometimes spotted in the area. Mammoth Hot Springs is another highlight of the park, accessible via 2 boardwalks that lead to the upper and lower terraces. The Minerva Terrace is the most famous, known for its bright travertine formations that change over time. While Minerva Terrace grabs most of the attention, the Mammoth Hot Springs area has over 50 hot springs, each adding to the area's unique, ever-changing beauty. With all these natural wonders and hidden dangers, it's clear that Yellowstone's beauty isn't the only thing that deserves attention. Scientists and the government have been closely monitoring the supervolcano for years to ensure the safety of the millions who visit each year. Let's dive into how they've been keeping watch, how scientists and government monitor the Yellowstone supervolcano. Many people wonder if Yellowstone's volcano will erupt again. Scientists believe it's not a matter of if, but when. The volcano remains active, with magma still under the surface, but predicting when it will erupt is very difficult. This is why scientists constantly study it, using tools like seismographs to measure earthquake activity. Yellowstone experiences thousands of small earthquakes each year, most too weak to be felt. However, if there's a sudden increase in earthquake activity, it could signal that magma is moving and the volcano is preparing to erupt. Scientists also use other methods to keep track of the volcano. They measure the temperature of the ground and the gases that come from hot springs and geysers. If there are changes in temperature or gas levels, It could indicate something happening below the surface. Satellites also help monitor Yellowstone by looking for any changes in the land's shape. If the ground begins to rise or swell, it could be a sign that pressure is building inside the volcano. In the past, unusual activity has led to parts of Yellowstone being closed for safety. For instance, in 2003, the temperature of the ground in some areas rose so much that plants and trees died, forcing the closure of trails. In 2014, a section of the park was closed after the ground near the Norris Geyser Basin rose more than 5 inches in a few months. This raised concerns that magma could be moving closer to the surface. These events prompted the development of new technologies to better monitor Yellowstone's magma chamber. Even though the likelihood of a super eruption is low, scientists continue to watch the volcano closely because of the severe consequences an eruption could have. Scientists also explore the possibility of smaller eruptions, which could happen instead of a super eruption. Volcanoes sometimes release pressure with smaller eruptions, which are not as dangerous. While these eruptions could still cause damage, they wouldn't be as devastating as a full super eruption. Some experts believe that Yellowstone's magma chamber may not have enough pressure to cause a super eruption and may instead release energy in smaller bursts over time. Satellites play a vital role in studying Yellowstone's volcano. They take detailed images of the park and track changes in the land and heat levels. With the help of Starlink satellites, scientists can stay connected to their equipment from anywhere, which is especially important for monitoring Yellowstone's more remote areas. This technology helps researchers keep a close eye on the volcano and respond quickly if something changes. A common question people ask is whether humans could stop an eruption by drilling into the volcano to release pressure. Scientists say this is not a good idea. Drilling into the magma chamber could make things worse by causing an eruption instead of preventing one. The best thing to do is continue studying the volcano and be ready to act if any warning signs appear. The government also plays a role in managing the potential threat of Yellowstone's supervolcano. The U.S. government has put various safety measures in place to deal with the risks the volcano poses. One major step is the creation of an emergency preparedness plan that can be activated if there are signs of an eruption. FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, is heavily involved in coordinating these efforts, working with state and local governments to ensure they have the resources and training needed for emergencies. If an eruption occurs, FEMA would lead the effort to evacuate people, provide medical aid, and offer shelter to those affected by the eruption's fallout. Beyond these, there is the United States Geological Survey, the agency responsible for monitoring Yellowstone's supervolcano and keeping the public informed about its activity. The USGS runs the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, which tracks seismic movements, changes in the land, and gas emissions around the park. If any unusual activity is detected, the USGS quickly issues warnings to the public and government officials. However, predicting exactly when an eruption will occur remains extremely difficult. So scientists focus on identifying early signs, like increased seismic activity or changes in gas emissions, that could suggest an eruption is more likely. A significant part of the government's response to the Yellowstone volcano is to raise public awareness about the potential risks. People living near the park, as well as those in surrounding states, need to understand the possible consequences of an eruption and know how to stay safe. One challenge here is that while people may find regular volcanic eruptions frightening, the scale of a super eruption can be hard to imagine. While typical volcanic eruptions only affect local areas, a super eruption would have global consequences, making it harder for many people to grasp the seriousness of the threat. Along with public awareness campaigns, the government focuses on running disaster simulations and training exercises. These are designed to prepare local officials, emergency responders, and first responders for the possibility of an eruption. Emergency personnel are trained for scenarios such as evacuating people from danger zones, offering medical treatment, and dealing with volcanic ash fallout. During these drills, mock eruptions are staged, and responders practice their roles in handling the situation efficiently and effectively. These exercises are vital in ensuring that emergency workers are well prepared for a real eruption. One of the biggest challenges in planning for a super eruption is that there is no single, universal response. The scale and impact of such an eruption would be unlike anything experienced before. While a typical volcanic eruption can cause damage to nearby areas, a super eruption would have global consequences. It would release massive amounts of ash, lava, and gases into the atmosphere. disrupting weather patterns and triggering what's called a volcanic winter. This cooling effect could persist for years and have a significant impact on global agriculture, resulting in food shortages. Beyond the environmental damage, the ash and gases could also lead to widespread health problems, including respiratory issues for millions of people. Even with extensive preparation, it would be impossible to completely mitigate the effects of such a catastrophic event. To address the potential worldwide consequences of an eruption, governments have partnered with international organizations to develop strategies for handling a super eruption. For instance, the United Nations has created frameworks to coordinate global relief efforts in case of such a disaster. These frameworks focus on the distribution of food, clean water, medical care, and managing refugee crises that could arise from a massive eruption. Countries around the world also collaborate to ensure they are prepared for the event. For example, in the event of widespread food shortages, nations would work together to share resources and support the most vulnerable populations. An essential part of the U.S. government's response is to monitor the Yellowstone volcano closely. Recent technological advancements have made it easier to detect early signs of volcanic activity. Satellites, for example, now allow scientists to observe changes in the surface of the Earth surrounding Yellowstone. These satellites can identify even slight shifts in the land shape, potentially signaling that magma is moving beneath the surface. This technology is incredibly useful for detecting early volcanic activity before it becomes hazardous. However, despite these technological strides, predicting the precise timing of an eruption remains impossible. Apart from research towards stopping a super eruption, there are indeed efforts to reduce the impact of a super eruption if it eventually happens. Scientists are researching various methods to mitigate the potential damage. One idea is to use technology to manage the release of volcanic gases. By capturing some of the gases emitted during an eruption, it may be possible to reduce the harmful chemicals that enter the atmosphere, thus minimizing the environmental and health effects of a super eruption. However, these technologies are still in the experimental stages, and it's unclear if they will be effective in the event of an eruption. Additionally, government agencies are continuing to invest in research and development to improve our understanding of supervolcanoes, such as the one beneath Yellowstone. By studying other supervolcanoes globally, scientists aim to better understand the conditions that trigger super eruptions and how to predict them. This research is vital for enhancing early warning systems and developing strategies to lessen the impact of a future eruption. As time passes, we can expect more technological advancements and improved preparedness plans. While it may not be possible to fully prevent a super eruption, the right actions can help reduce its effects. The Yellowstone supervolcano will continue to serve as a reminder of the immense forces beneath the Earth's surface. Though we may never know exactly when it will erupt, it's reassuring to know that the government is making the necessary preparations, and scientists are working tirelessly to study the volcano and understand its behavior. While the future remains uncertain, with careful planning and global cooperation, we can face the potential threat of Yellowstone's supervolcano. Is there a possibility that the Yellowstone volcano will erupt again in the future? How soon could another eruption potentially happen? Let us know in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.